What started as a routine late-night interview turned into one of television's most explosive confrontations when Denzel Washington walked off Stephen Colbert's show after the host made shocking personal attacks that crossed every line of professional decency. The Late Show studio buzzed with its usual pre-taping energy as Denzel Washington settled into the guest chair across from Stephen Colbert. The acclaimed actor had come to promote his latest directorial project, a powerful drama exploring themes of faith and redemption. What nobody anticipated was that this seemingly routine interview would explode into a career-defining moment that would leave audiences stunned and social media ablaze. Colbert opened with his trademark smirk, but there was something different in his demeanor tonight, an edge that veteran industry insiders would later describe as unusually aggressive. The first few minutes proceeded normally, with Washington discussing his film's production process and the challenges of directing while starring. The audience laughed at appropriate moments, and Washington displayed his characteristic warmth and professionalism. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when Colbert steered the conversation toward Washington's well-known Christian faith. "You're pretty vocal about your religious beliefs," Colbert said, his tone carrying an unmistakable note of condescension. "In an industry that's become increasingly progressive, don't you think your traditional views are, well, outdated?" Washington's expression tightened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "My faith is central to who I am, Stephen. It's guided me through my career and my life. I don't see beliefs in love, forgiveness, and service as outdated." Colbert leaned forward, sensing vulnerability. "But you've been criticized for some of your positions. Your comments about traditional marriage, your stance on certain social issues. Don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to evolve with the times?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Washington shifted in his chair, his jaw setting in a way that those who knew him recognized as a warning sign. "I think celebrities have a responsibility to be authentic," he replied carefully. "I'm not going to change my core beliefs to appease anyone." What happened next would be replayed countless times across social media platforms. Colbert's mask of professional courtesy completely dropped. "Come on, Denzel. You're an intelligent man. Surely you can see how your traditional views might seem hypocritical, coming from someone who's made millions in an industry built on creativity and diversity?" The studio audience grew uncomfortably quiet. Even the production crew seemed to sense that something had gone terribly wrong. Washington's eyes flashed with something that veteran talk show producers would later describe as barely controlled fury. "Hypocritical?" Washington's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the surface. "What's hypocritical is sitting here being lectured about my beliefs by someone who claims to champion tolerance while showing none himself." Colbert's response revealed the depths of his miscalculation. "Look, I'm just saying that maybe it's time for you to consider that your views might be on the wrong side of history. The world is changing, and frankly, some of your positions make you sound like you're stuck in the past." The insult landed like a physical blow. Washington's entire demeanor transformed. The warmth that had made him one of Hollywood's most beloved figures vanished, replaced by an intensity that filled the studio. Several audience members would later report feeling the temperature in the room drop. The wrong side of history? Washington's voice carried decades of experience dealing with real prejudice and discrimination. "Stephen, I've spent my entire career fighting for dignity, respect, and opportunity. I've used my platform to uplift others and tell stories that matter. Don't you dare suggest that my faith makes me backward." But Colbert, perhaps intoxicated by what he perceived as momentum, pushed further into dangerous territory. "I'm not attacking your faith, Denzel. I'm just questioning whether someone in your position should be more careful about the messages they send, especially to young people who look up to you." The patronizing tone was the final straw. Washington stood slowly, his movement deliberate and controlled. The studio lights caught the fury in his eyes as he looked down at Colbert, who suddenly seemed to realize he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. More careful about my messages? Washington's voice carried the weight of decades in an industry that had tried to diminish him countless times. The message I send is that integrity matters more than popularity, that standing for something is more important than standing for nothing. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Crew members exchanged worried glances while the audience sat in stunned silence. Colbert, perhaps recognizing that he had crossed a line, attempted damage control. Denzel, I think there might be a misunderstanding here. I wasn't trying to— No, misunderstanding at all. Washington cut him off, his voice carrying the authority that had commanded respect on movie sets around the world. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work, then ambushed me with personal attacks, disguised as social commentary. The studio's atmosphere had become electric with tension. Camera operators continued filming, knowing they were capturing television history in the making. Colbert's usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization that he had severely underestimated his guest. Denzel, please, let's just— Colbert attempted to regain control of the interview, but Washington wasn't finished. Let's just what, Stephen? Pretend that what just happened didn't happen? You think you can hide behind comedy and claim you were just asking tough questions? Washington's voice grew stronger with each word. This isn't journalism. This is an ambush designed to make me look foolish for having principles. The audience sat frozen, witnessing something unprecedented. Many had never seen their typically jovial host so thoroughly outmaneuvered. Colbert's trademark wit had abandoned him entirely, leaving him exposed and fumbling for words. I think you're overreacting, Colbert said, attempting to minimize the damage. This is what we do here. We have conversations about important topics. Washington's laugh was devoid of any humor. Overreacting? You just spent the last 10 minutes trying to shame me for my beliefs, suggesting I'm on the wrong side of history, and implying that I'm a bad influence on young people. And you think I'm overreacting? The power dynamic in the studio had completely shifted. Washington commanded the space with the same presence that had made him one of cinema's most compelling figures. Colbert, meanwhile, appeared to shrink in his chair, his usual bravado crumbling under the weight of his guest's righteous indignation. That's not what I meant, and you know it, Colbert protested weakly, but his words carried no conviction. Then, what did you mean, Stephen? Explain to me how questioning my integrity and suggesting I'm stuck in the past was meant to be respectful dialogue. Washington's voice carried decades of experience dealing with subtle and not-so-subtle attempts to undermine him. Explain how patronizing me about the messages I send was supposed to be constructive. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the studio crew had stopped their usual behind-the-scenes bustling to watch the confrontation unfold. This wasn't scripted television drama. This was real conflict playing out in real time. Colbert made one final desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Look, Denzel, maybe we got off track here. Why don't we start over and talk about your film? The suggestion was met with a look of such contempt that several audience members would later describe feeling uncomfortable just witnessing it. Start over? Washington's voice dripped with disdain. You think you can attack someone's character, their faith, their integrity, and then just start over when it doesn't go your way? That's not how the real world works, Stephen. The veteran actor began removing his microphone, his movements deliberate and final. The sound of the small device being unclipped echoed through the suddenly quiet studio like a gunshot. Where are you going? Colbert asked, panic creeping into his voice as he realized the interview was slipping completely out of his control. Washington stood to his full height, towering over the seated host with an authority that filled the entire studio. I'm going somewhere where people understand the difference between challenging questions and personal attacks. Somewhere where respect still means something. The audience watched in stunned silence as one of Hollywood's most respected figures prepared to walk away from what had started as a routine promotional appearance. Colbert's face had gone pale, understanding finally dawning that this confrontation would define both their careers in ways neither had anticipated when the cameras started rolling. "Denzel, wait!" Colbert called out desperately, his voice cracking, with the realization of what was happening. "We can work this out. This doesn't have to end like this." Washington paused at the edge of the interview area, turning back with a look that could have melted steel. "Work this out? Stephen, you just spent 15 minutes trying to tear down everything I stand for. You questioned my character, dismissed my faith, and suggested I'm a negative influence. There's nothing to work out." The studio lights seemed harsher now, illuminating every uncomfortable detail of the moment. Colbert's usual commanding presence had completely evaporated, leaving him looking small and desperate in his oversized chair. "I was just doing my job," Colbert protested weakly, but the words sounded hollow even to him. "Your job?" Washington's voice rose for the first time, carrying an edge that made everyone in the studio flinch. "Your job is to ambush guests and attack their personal beliefs? Your job is to create controversy by tearing people down? If that's your job, Stephen, then you need a new line of work." The production team stood frozen, unsure whether to continue filming or cut to commercial. This was uncharted territory, a complete breakdown of the careful choreography that made late-night television work. Colbert made one last pathetic attempt to salvage his reputation. "The audience wants honest conversations about difficult topics. I'm just giving them what they want." Washington's response came like thunder. "Don't hide behind the audience, Stephen. This wasn't an honest conversation. This was a hit job, and you know it. You brought me here hoping to make me look like some backwards relic so you could score points with your viewers." The silence that followed was suffocating. Several audience members were visibly uncomfortable, some looking down at their hands, others whispering anxiously to their companions. "I've been in this business for over 4 decades, Washington continued, his voice carrying the weight of his experience. "I've dealt with real racism, real discrimination, real challenges. I've been attacked by people who actually had power over my career. But what you did tonight, this petty, cowardly ambush, this is beneath even that." With those words, Washington began walking toward the exit, his stride confident and unwavering. Each step echoed through the silent studio like a judge's gavel. "Denzel!" Colbert called out one final time, desperation clear in his voice. "Please don't do this." Washington stopped at the studio door and turned back one last time. The camera caught the full force of his contempt as he delivered his final words. "I'm not doing this, Stephen. You did this. You chose to attack a guest instead of having a conversation. You chose controversy over respect. You chose to be small when you could have been great." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Enjoy your ratings, but remember, they came at the cost of your integrity." With that, Denzel Washington walked out of the studio, leaving behind a shocked audience, a humiliated host, and television history. The heavy studio door closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the building. Colbert sat alone at his desk, the weight of what had just happened settling over him like a shroud. The audience began filing out quietly, many shaking, their heads in disbelief. Some were already pulling out their phones, ready to share what they had witnessed with the world. The cameras finally stopped rolling, but the damage was done. Within hours, clips of the confrontation would spread across every social media platform, sparking fierce debates about respect, professionalism, and the boundaries of entertainment. Washington's dignity in the face of unprovoked attacks would be praised, while Colbert's conduct would be widely condemned. The fallout was swift and severe. Advertisers began pulling their sponsorships, ratings plummeted, and industry insiders distanced themselves from the embattled host. What had started as an attempt to create viral content had instead created a career-defining disaster. In the end, the confrontation served as a stark reminder that in an industry built on personalities and relationships, respect and professionalism aren't just nice ideals, their essential foundations. Washington had demonstrated that true strength comes not from tearing others down, but from standing firm in one's principles when under attack. The lesson was learned too late for Colbert, but it resonated throughout Hollywood and beyond, forever changing how late-night television approaches controversial topics.